We know that Ferrari demand performance, and quite frankly, Ferrari's performance this year has been subpar. They have arguably one of the best driver lineups on the grid in, of course, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Hello and welcome back to Formula One Espresso News, the podcast brought to you by me, Terry, from Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans, the Formula One show. This week, we're going to be talking about that contract that Fred Vasseur has just been handed at Ferrari. We're going to be talking about the Red Bull reset with, of course, that confirmation that Max is stopping. We're going to be looking at Spa and wet weather racing. We're going to be looking at Christian Horner's future because that's gone a little bit quiet. And then we're going to have a final look at what we know with regards to silly season or the lack of it as we head into, of course, the summer break in Formula One. So if all of that takes your fancy, you've got me for 30 minutes or so. Do me a quick favour, hit that like, follow, subscribe, whatever button is available to you on the platform you're listening to the podcast on, because it tremendously helps me boost up the rankings and lets more people hear the podcast. And you never know, it might even one day pay for me to be bringing you this podcast from the paddock. So if you want to get latest from the paddock to the podcast via the shed, you're in the right place. This is Formula One Espresso News. I'm Terry. Get your coffee, let's sit down, strap in, and give it some full. Right, so let's start with that breaking news that we had from Ferrari this morning. That is that Fred Vasseur has been handed a new multi-year extension to stay on as team principal of Ferrari. Now, the details of this are quite sketchy, but we are being led to believe it's a 3-year deal that he's been offered and, of course, signed. The timing of it is really important with, of course, Christian Horner's departure from Red Bull, or lack of departure, because he's still there on garden leave, whichever way you want to look at it. However, there was, of course, some mild speculation. And I call it mild speculation because I truly didn't believe for 1 minute that Christian was going to swap the political hot potato that was Red Bull straight into, if that's a political hot potato, I don't know how you would describe Ferrari. It's a political hotbed, isn't it? But either way, personally, it was always going to be doubtful that Christian would go there. However, with him being a free agent, you never know, do you? However, Ferrari have moved quick to end that speculation and make sure they go into the summer break with no rumours about who's going to be in charge with the Tifosi, which is a smart move by Ferrari to do that. Now, what does it mean for Ferrari? Well, it means it's all or nothing for Fred, really, doesn't it? He's got a 3-year contract and he's going to have to win something. I mean, realistically, in these 3 years that he's got coming up with Ferrari, if he's going to remain as team principal, he needs to deliver at least one title. That's fundamentally what his aim's going to be. He talked about it being continuing the project, how it's a challenge, how he's going to, take this forward. We've got new regulations coming on board. We know that Ferrari demand performance, and quite frankly, Ferrari's performance this year has been subpar. They have arguably one of the best driver lineups on the grid in, of course, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. However, most people will point towards an age in Lewis Hamilton as not being the one that was dominating Formula One all those years ago. But you can't deny that on paper, at least, Ferrari have all of the ingredients to be world title winners once more. However, it seems to be they've lost the recipe and also the cooks who can make that into a winning formula or a winning recipe, because quite frankly, the Ferrari we're seeing this season looks a million miles away from winning any championship, really. I mean, yes, you can point to their second in the championship, but they're only second due to the poor performance of everyone else around them, not due to the actual performance of Ferrari being that good that they're second. They've gone backwards with their development. They've, false started. Their suspension's on board now, but as I've been saying for quite a while now, this isn't the silver bullet that the commentators have been alluring to. This isn't the final fix for Ferrari, far from it. It was a very ambitious move to change that Ferrari suspension in the final year of regulations. We know it's been done in preparation of 2026, but even so, their performance last year was actually competitive and was certainly getting competitive as the season drew to a close, and they completely ripped up, they talked about 99% of the SF25 being new. Well, quite frankly, maybe they should have just wheeled out the SF24 because it was much more competitive. But either way you look at it, Fred Vasseur is under pressure. I mean, that long-term ambition has to be a title back at Maranello. It has to be a win for Ferrari. It can't be anything else. It is one of the most high-profile jobs in Formula One and one of the most demanding. And to be honest, I am surprised that Fred, 3 years into the role, 2.5 years into the role now, without a championship win and without really looking too close to win the championship, has managed to get that extension. But then you've also got to say kudos to Ferrari for ending in speculation, going into summer break, making sure they've got one eye on the prize, which is next season, and making sure that actually when it comes to it, they are the people who, many expect to get back towards title winning ways. Many fans want to see Ferrari challenging at the front. Lewis Hamilton has had a poor season by his standards. Charles Leclerc has had a great season, although he's picked up podiums along the way. But even so, what you expect from Ferrari, we haven't been seeing, have we, on the track this season? And it's been a massively disappointing, underwhelming performance from the team from Maranello. However, this will end that speculation. It will make sure that actually their driver lineup is now secure for next year. Team principal lineup is secure for next year. All eyes are on development of the car. It will allow the team to focus, allow them to go forward. And for that, I think it's a good move for Ferrari heading into the summer break. But let me know your thoughts on this one. Do you think that Fred Vasseur actually deserved more time in the role? I mean, personally, I think he's made changes. I think the issue you've got with Ferrari is it's so embedded, it's so political, it's so our way or the highway, that trying to change it, you're changing a culture, and it's not easy at all. And it's certainly not something that's instant, and it's certainly not something that can be done overnight. And Fred Vasseur is 2.5 years into this project and probably still isn't reaping the rewards of everything that he's put in terms of the foundation. So you kind of hope that's going to come to fruition. You kind of hope that with Lewis, driving his point of view, Charles is a driver who, you cut him and he bleeds Ferrari. You'd hope that with this team that Ferrari have assembled, this dream team almost, that they can get back to winning the championship in 2026 or at least 2027. But I feel if we get to this point in 2027 and Ferrari are in the same position, I don't for 1 minute believe that Fred Vasseur will be remaining in that team principal role going forward. But really want to know your thoughts on this one. I mean, who's out there really, with the exception of Christian Horner? There's not a lot who you'd sit here and say, they would do a better job than Fred. And yes, you've got the gentleman from the WEC who's had great success. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So a sideways move for that was always an option for Ferrari, but then they risk, destabilising the WEC program that's bringing success, which is something they don't particularly want to do either. They're quite proud of their Le Mans wins, and they don't want to disrupt that apple cart as such by bringing that transfer across. So I can understand why they've done that one as well. But for me, I don't know who out there I would go to who I'd say would be a better bet currently on the market than Fred Vasseur. But likewise, James Vowles is probably one who springs to mind, but he's not going to leave. He's not going to leave Williams from that point of view. For me, it's a no-brainer, but I'm glad they've done it, and intrigued to know your thoughts on that one. Right, the second one is why my watch is buzzing rather rapidly at the moment is, of course, Max Verstappen's news that he's staying until 2026. Listeners of the podcast will not be surprised by this. Followers of the page will not be shocked at this. We've been talking about this. We said it was coming. It's now been made official. It was made official this week with the Ford video that they dropped last night on the Red Bull social media. There could not have been a bigger hint for that. But Max Verstappen has come out himself during media day today to basically say what we all know, and that is he will remain a Red Bull driver for 2026. There's talk that he's negotiated some settlement for 2027 where he can look at it again. And whether or not he has, he will be in the final year of his contract. It's a lot easier to buy out the final year of the contract than it is to break it. We know that his clause had expired in terms of being third in the championship, which meant someone would have to buy him out. As I talked about in the podcast many a time, that is a huge investment for a team to buy Max Verstappen out of his contract. Yes, I know you'll gain it back in terms of marketing revenue, sponsorship, etc., etc. But if you're paying 100 plus million to buy Max Verstappen out of his contract, and then you're then buying Max Verstappen another 50, 60 million a year, it's a huge investment, and one that I don't think the teams were in a position to do. For Max, it makes perfect sense. I mean, Red Bull are on a complete reset, aren't they? Laurent Mekies has come in. Yes, there are the lingering rumours that move has been enforced by the Verstappen camp as the caveat for him staying. If it hasn't, I don't think we ever know the truth. You would have imagined that Red Bull would have notified Max Verstappen's camp over what they were planning to do. I don't personally think that this would have been one which they sprung on them. I don't think for 1 minute that Max Verstappen and his management team picked up the phone like the rest of us and went, "Oh, Christian Horner's been sacked." I imagine there was very in-depth conversations that went on beforehand between Red Bull and Max Verstappen's camp to let them know what was going on. Laurent Mekies come in. He came in for Spa, and the feedback was good. I mean, they made a couple of bad calls with regards to Yuki Tsunoda, and of course the wet weather setup. We'll come on to that on the next subject. I don't want to go too much into that one while we talk about Max. But the cracks are showing out in Red Bull. They are a team who I feel are papering over the cracks. their direction is unknown. Whether or not they're going to have two teams in Formula One, what they're going to do going forward, how good their powertrain is. Pierre Washen and how good he is. All these key people leaving and they've been promoted from within. All those people promoted up going to be up to the same standard that the people they're replacing are. All of these unknowns make Red Bull a massive variable going into 2026. Now, of course, it could be a good thing. Reset is not always bad. We talk about resets being a bad thing, but actually it could be a good thing for the team. It could be a good thing to move them to another level. It could be great for them to have someone with Lawrence's technical ability coming in to run the team. We've seen the success that Haas have enjoyed by employing Ayuka Matsu. We've seen the success Williams are starting to reap by employing someone like James Vowles, who's got an engineering background as well. So actually team principals with more of a finger on their pulse in terms of the engineering structure of a Formula One team is of course good for Formula One teams to tap into if they are good engineers bringing them up through the ranks, which of course they are. And the majority of the ones that are currently in Formula One. But a reset is a reset, isn't it? There's a risk for unknown. Max likes what he sees, or he likes better what he sees at Red Bull compared to the unknown variables. Now, what I mean by that is the Honda project at Aston Martin is a huge question mark, being made by Honda USA rather than Honda Japan. A lot of the good Honda employees went to Red Bull powertrains. They then, obviously pulled out Formula One, came back, did the hokey cokey with regards to their engine supply. They're back in Formula One with Aston Martin as the sole supply, but there is no guarantee to how good that engine's going to be. They lost a couple of years of development while they negotiated whether or not they were coming back in or not. Like I said, Red Bull pinched a load of good staff. And then, of course, you then got the Mercedes talk. Mercedes got the dominant engine. Mercedes have got the best engine going, but we don't know that. It's all based on wild speculation and rumour and gossip. We don't know if that's true. We don't know if that's actually, based on anything factual, whether or not that's just sound bites. Now, no team is going to stand there and say that their engine's rubbish, are they? Nobody's going to come out and say, we've developed an engine for 2026 and it's a crock of shit. It ain't going to happen. Every team's going to play their own thing up. Every team's going to play their own engine up. Every team's going to make it look like they're at least on a par with everybody else. And until those cars have done testing, until they've been turned up to the max for that first qualifying session in Melbourne, then actually we won't know who's got the engine part right. And then, of course, there's the aero package. There's the unknown on that side as well. You get the engine right, but you might get the aero wrong. With the whole sail change that Formula One are having for 2026, who's going to get it right? Adrian Newey's alluded to it being a more engine-dominant era again. We know we're losing the ground effect that we've got in the current era. If you think back to the Mercedes dominations from before, all of those things actually were based on the fact that it was more of an engine-dominant era. We know that in the past, Red Bull tended to have a better aero package, but had, of course, that Renault engine with its issues and took them a while to get up to Mercedes levels who were dominant with that engine. Adrian's talked about the fact that could be happening again, and Adrian's talked about that you might get your aero right, but if your engine's crap, it ain't going to make a blind bit of difference because engine equalisation isn't there because we're taking the locks off the engines for 2026. So all to pay for. I think it's a sensible move by Max and the Verstappen camp. They're going to see how things play out. They're going to see who's got it. Max can then make an informed decision in 2027. There is a lot more option on the table for 2027, 2028, those couple of years, because all the top teams are literally up for grabs. So again, you've got a McLaren to come into the mix. You've got a Ferrari to come into the mix, not just the Aston Martin and of course the Mercedes into the mix. So it makes sense to me for Max to wait. It makes sense to see the way the ground lies. It makes sense to sort of see who's come out of the regulations in, of course, the best possible position. And, of course, it could be Red Bull. It could actually be that Ford have done their work on it. Ford have got what they wanted. They bolted in that transit engine that goes up the hill like the clappers at Goodwood, not the one that's stuck at 40 on the motorway that you can't get past going up a hill. And hopefully, I mean the supercharged one. But, I mean, on the serious side, and if Ford and Red Bull have managed to get it right, then Max staying could be a masterstroke, couldn't it? But all to pay for. But either way, Max to Mercedes for 2026 is now officially over. And then that will bring us back on to the other parts, which we're talking to on silly season on ice, basically, as we close out the show afterwards. But Max Verstappen has officially confirmed he will remain a Red Bull driver for 2026. Right, so Spa. Now, I don't want to go into results and stuff because ultimately for me, this isn't about getting out. I bring Formula One news. Most people have watched the Formula One highlights by now. Most people have watched the race. So I always feel doing a race review is a bit of a cop-out in terms of wasting valuable time that everybody has. So for me, I mean, the biggest takeaway for me was, of course, the wet weather. I mean, wet weather tyres are the biggest waste of time going, aren't they? I made a joke about it on Threads over the weekend. Name something more useless than a set of wet weather tyres. We take them all the way around the world, which in a time of being carbon zero or carbon net zero, as Formula One trying to do, seems crazy. We take these wet tyres around the world, including into the desert, and never use them. And they look great on a show run up at Goodwood, but in terms of being on track, they are absolutely shocking. Now, for me, there's a few things here. Fundamentally, the tyre issue has to be laid at Pirelli's door. I'm sorry. This isn't Formula One's problem as such, and it's not the FIA's problem as such. It's Pirelli's issue that these tyres are just rubbish and don't work. Now, we know why they don't work. It's visibility. Ultimately, they clear off loads more water than what the old wet tyres did, but they clear it off at such a speed and such a pace that actually it's not beneficial if you're sat behind it because you can't see anything. Now, let's get it right. When it was raining heavily for the start of the Grand Prix, it was the right decision to delay it. That part was right. What was wrong was waiting so long before you restarted it. And what I mean by that is you only need to give the teams about 10 minutes before they can restart a Grand Prix. We waited. It felt like an hour. It felt like hours, to be honest. So I don't know how long it actually was, but it was a lot longer than what it should have been. Because by the time we come out, they were pretty much intermediates going to slicks, weren't they? You have to ask a few questions. Number one, why didn't they go out earlier and run the wet tyres and clear off some of the standing water? That probably would have helped from that point of view, but then would have eased into the race. So I get that. But they should have at least started earlier. I think it was dry enough to do a standing start as well. Lando was saying that he wanted a rolling start. Any driver at the front is going to say they want a rolling start. That's not a Lando thing. Whoever was in pole position is going to prefer a rolling start than what they're going to prefer a standing start because they get a jump on the person behind them. That's common sense. So I certainly don't blame Lando for trying to push for a rolling start at all for the Grand Prix, nor do I blame McLaren, who don't want their drivers going out. But for me, it was a great win for Oscar Piastri. He timed the restart to perfection. No, there's some talk about Lando and battery problems, and I don't believe that bullshit. I think basically Oscar got the jump on him. I think Oscar came out the final corner ready. He timed the restart to perfection. He got the slipstream going at the Kemmel Straight, and he made the most of it. And it's like anything in Formula One, isn't it? We may have the closest racing in terms of cars being able to get close to each other, but they can't overtake in Formula One. And once Oscar was in the lead and Lando's in that position, he was never close enough. He had that slow pit stop as well, which I think has gone missed by a lot of the mainstream media, which put him well down the line when he came out for that. Yes, he made a couple of silly mistakes when he was trying to catch Oscar back up, which obviously invariably halted that charge, but that slow pit stop would already done the damage to that anyway. So I'm not too sure I buy into this, Lando's mistakes cost him the win. I think the slow pit stop cost him the win, and all of the other parts just compounded the misery even more for him. And what I will say is Oscar looks back to being calm. I said it was important for him to break that trend that obviously Lando had of those couple of wins going into summer break. If Oscar can look out Hungary this weekend as well, that will put him in a really strong position. It's currently 16 points in the Drivers' Championship. If he can go in with a few more added for the summer break, that will boost his confidence no end, and will probably put that question mark over Lando in terms of can he mount a title challenge. I think for McLaren, I'm enjoying the fact that they can race, but I don't feel they can race, if I'm honest. I feel team orders are still to play for. I feel we've got some papaya rules going on. And what I mean by that is there seems to be some things around strategy, pit stops, first corner, all that sort of thing. The best thing that can happen for Formula One this season is the Constructors' Championship being wrapped up. As soon as that's wrapped up, if those two drivers are in a title fight, they should then be free to race. I mean, that's what we all want ultimately now. We know that McLaren can lock out the Constructors' Championship. So what we need now is McLaren to lock that out pretty damn fast, which will allow us some decent running in terms of, a fight for the championship, for the Drivers' Championship, because hopefully you'd think at that point, with that bonus secure for the team, with that championship secured, gloves would be off and they'd be like, Joe, what? Knock yourselves out, just go and race, which is what we want. So fingers crossed that happens soon. I don't know what the gaps are as such, but I know that obviously that lead is commanding. So for me, I want that to happen sooner rather than later, and then we can get some real racing at the top, because I still think it's who's on pole, who's on first corner, who's on the first after lap one, etc., in terms of proprietary rules. And I don't blame McLaren for that, by the way. This isn't a criticism of McLaren, because ultimately the Constructors' Championship pays your bills, it pays your prize points, it pays your bonus, it pays your standings in the Formula One world. That is the one that teams want to secure the most. So I don't blame McLaren at all for playing that game. It's the first title that you go for at the start of the season. So yeah, lock it out and then we can race. But for me, it was just a misery of waiting too long. But then you've also got to play into the fact the drivers asked for it. So the drivers did ask for a bit more around the safety with Spa. Obviously, what's happened there with drivers previously. We know that there's been crashes, we know there's been fatalities there. The drivers did ask for the FIA to show a bit more consideration to that as well. So whilst there was a pocket of drivers who want to race, you're always going to have that, and a pocket of drivers who didn't feel safe racing. I also understand the FIA's point of view of delaying it. And ultimately, at least we got some racing compared to a few years ago where we got a few laps behind the safety car. So at least we actually managed to get some racing for Spa. Yeah, for me, it was a reminder of some of the videos I saw, people jumping on shuttles, walking 40 minutes, of why the new modern Grand Prix with better transport links may not on track be the best action, but certainly off track and getting to and from a Formula One circuit do hands down beat the older tracks, which is the bigger challenge that Formula One are facing, isn't it? Right, then we're going to come on to Christian Horner's future, because this is probably looking a bit more clear after what's happened with Ferrari and Fred Vasseur, even though, like I said at the start of the show, I didn't think he was going to go there at all. But Christian Horner is still officially employed as a director for Red Bull Racing. I think Red Bull have copped out here. They didn't talk about it in Spa. I expected at least a statement from it. I think that's a pretty poor show, if I'm honest. Yes, they were totally entitled to sack Christian Horner based on their performance, but I think for them to double down and not even talk to anyone is a bit of a cop-out by the company. I think someone should have faced the press and should be facing the press, if I'm honest. But in terms of Christian Horner himself, he's been at Oasis concerts, he's been horse riding, he's been on holiday, he's been quite active on social media all of a sudden, showing everybody what he's not doing, which is watching any Grand Prix racing. Obviously being paid by Red Bull to stay away currently, as I said before, no doubt negotiating that release. But ultimately, with Christian Horner, I can still see the only route back into Formula One is an Alpine-style deal where he can be a part owner like Toto in the team. He doesn't like the politics. He doesn't like what happened at Red Bull. He won't like how they ousted him with a boardroom. He will want to say in that. And the only way to do that is with a consortium. Now, Alpine seems the most obvious bet. We know they're being geared up for sale. We've talked about this on the show many times. Obviously, at one point it was going to be Andretti, but they obviously went into the Cadillac bid. And then, of course, High-Tech was sort of floating around until Oliver Oaks' brother was caught with a suitcase full of money outside Silverstone. That put paid to that. Might have been on his way to Oxford to end soon, but we never know. But either way, on a serious note, that put paid to that one. And so Alpine looked the most likely for it. Now there is talk that he will team up with other investors to come inside, buy a part, buy an Alpine, get that 33%. We know, of course, Bernie Ecclestone is a good friend. We also know that Flavio Briatore, who's linked obviously to buying the team out eventually, is obviously a good friend. Renault have announced a new top boss this week. That might make a difference to what they do with their Formula One team going forward. I still think that that's probably the best route for Christian back into Formula One if he decides that's what he wants to do. I've no doubt he's waiting for the Red Bull settlement to help fund that, if that's the case, or at least see how much it's going to be, to see how much he can put towards it. But ultimately, that is, I think, the only route we'll see Christian Horner back into Formula One in terms of the teams. Now, whether or not he might, Toto alluded to him rocking up at the FIA. With Bernie Ecclestone as a good friend, I would never rule anything out. Money is no object here. Christian is a very polarising figure, and he would do well at the FIA in terms of he wouldn't give a shit about what people thought of him, about what people say, and he proved that at Red Bull. So I think that actually, if there was an avenue where he wanted to do something like that, I think that he would. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Formula One bosses in terms of finding the next Panto villain. Netflix love to paint Christian out as that Panto villain, and for Drive to Survive, he plays it to perfection. And we haven't got that sort of character in the paddock at the moment. So where do we get that from in terms of the drama off the track? And believe me, they will want it, whether or not fans want it or not. I can tell you now, the producers will want it, if nothing else. So where does that villain come from? Where does that that Christian Horner shape hold in terms of the media and Formula One get filled by? Because if you listen to a team principal press conference at the moment, it's lacking the character that someone like Christian brings, because for whatever faults you can level against him in terms of playing the media, playing the Panto villain, there are roles that he played to perfection. So he could certainly do a job at the FIA if he wanted to. And for me personally, though, I think he will take time out. I think he will evaluate. He will be negotiating with Red Bull. And I think if we see Christian in a Formula One paddock anytime soon, it will be with a venture that buys out Alpine. And the irony between having a Mercedes-backed team that's owned by Christian Horner would just be immense, wouldn't it? It would be like the ultimate to Toto, wouldn't it? So I really want to see that one play out just for that to happen, where they've got to sit in a meeting together with Toto supplying Christian engines after vowing it was something he would never do when Red Bull needed an engine, hence the old Red Bull powertrain veteran, isn't it? So keep your eyes peeled for that one, but I think at the moment we're not going to hear a lot. It's always solicitors, it's all being negotiated, and at the moment I think Christian's quite happy to spend time with his family, counting his money, waiting for Red Bull to come to a decision. As for Red Bull, I think they've got to speak to the media sooner rather than later. We know the sponsors are unhappy. We know they're in the middle of renegotiating their Oracle deal. It'll be interesting to see if they lose any money on that one. And there is talk that a lot of the major sponsors were unhappy that they weren't told of the news. The first they heard of it was via social media. So they're not happy with Red Bull for that. And with Red Bull not talking to anyone at the moment, it kind of feels they need to get someone out pretty sharpish to face the media and just bat these questions off before the summer break. Personally, I think their strategy is they're waiting for the summer break so they can just see it all die down. And then they'll wait for obviously Zandvoort to see if they got to make an announcement or not. I think their answer is they're just going to let it play out and go into the summer with no comments on it. And hopefully by then they sorted Christian out, Max is stopping, and everyone's kind of moved on from it. I'm pretty sure that's the media strategy currently surrounding. But remains to be seen. Let me know your thoughts on Christian Horner's future. Where do you see him ending up? Just drop it in the comments somewhere. Drop us a message. Tag us in social media, whichever is easiest. But I'm really intrigued to know what people's thoughts are. Do you think that Christian is going to rock up someone like Alpine? Or do you think he's done with Formula One for good? Or even could we be seeing him in the FIA anytime soon? Let me know your thoughts. And then we come to what's actually left of the silly season for 2026. Max will actually close off a lot of doors for this one. So, as we know it, we know that Max Verstappen will stay. We're fully expecting Isaac Hazard to be promoted up for next season. That will leave Lawson, and it will then leave Arvid Lindblad in at VCOB. However, there is a question mark over Yuki Tsunoda. He's not got the Honda backing, but Laurent Mekies is a fan and would like to retain Yuki in one form or another. So probably Yuki is still the big question mark for me. We know they want to get Arvid in the car. Could they do an Arvid Yuki VCOB and drop Liam Lawson? Absolutely. But Liam enjoys a lot of the Ford backing, so don't rule that one out. I think they're keen to put Isaac in with obviously Max, so I think that one says it is. Like I say, Yuki won't have any Honda money backing him, won't have any major personal sponsors backing him, so it'd be interesting to see what Red Bull do with that one. I personally think they will use it as an opportunity to move him on, but I think that Laurent Mekies is trying his level best to get Yuki into one of the two teams there. But for me, that's going to be the Red Bull VCARB lineup. I think that Yuki will lose his space. You'll have Lindblad and you'll have Lawson at VCARB, and then you'll have Max and you'll have Isaac Hazard for the main team. Now, with regards to other driver moves, that would of course lead straight into Mercedes, who would of course announce both Kimi and then announce George. George is expected to stay until about 2027, but I imagine there'd be loopholes in there. Kimi, I'm imagining a 1 year, maybe a 1 + 1 year deal. We know he's got some options sort of in there anyway for Mercedes to extend. Mercedes own the contracts for both of those drivers in exchange for backing them through the junior categories. So they hold all the cards for that one. So basically they'll be getting what they want. But fully expecting that to be announced, probably after the summer break, where we'll see George Russell confirmed, now that Max is confirmed, and then I imagine they do a joint one with Kimi Antonelli at the same time. Valtteri Bottas to Cadillac is pretty much almost a done deal, we're being told, along with Sergio Perez, even though there's been names chucked in, like Jack Crawford being in negotiations, Mick Schumacher being in the frame as well. It looks likely it's going to go with a Sergio Perez and a Valtteri Bottas partnership for Cadillac coming into Formula One is the latest we hear on that one. In terms of that, everyone else is pretty much settled then. Alpine's second seat is probably the only one. Franco Colapinto, after the summer break, is looking increasingly at risk. Whether or not Paul Aaron will get the nod up is a bit unsure at the moment. We're not sure if he's got the personal backing, or whether or not Jack Doohan might well re-emerge back into the Alpine seat. Bear in mind, you can only use 4 drivers in the season, so they might be a bit dubious about bringing Paul Aaron in, because he will count as their 4th and final driver. Although, like most of these rules, you can get a dispensation from the FIA, so I wouldn't say that's a sort of nail in the coffin as such. Paul Aaron has been doing a boatload of testing, so I won't rule that one out. But the word on the street is that Franco Colapinto will be out after this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix, barring a massive result. He's not done well since he's come back. He's really struggled, to be honest. So I'm not at all surprised about rumour at all. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. That might be the only drive move we see for this year. As for everyone else on the grid, they seem pretty locked out for the rest of this season, next season. And there was obviously some early talk about Lewis Hamilton retiring. He's not. He said that many times. That announcement that he's got due on the 8th is not that. It's not a Lewis retirement announcement at all. So people thinking and saying that are just talking rubbish on that one. And on that front, that's what I will say. We're heading into summer. We're heading into silly season. Expect loads of stories to just be raked back up. Expect speculation. Expect clickbaits because they got no news. It's going to happen. It happens every single year. Drives me crazy. I read a story and I'm like, when is that fake? I'm like, have we reported on that? It's a bit like the Aston Martin one today, wasn't it? And the Aston Martin share thing has finally gone through. And the only thing that's changed since all the way back in March when I did the video on it is the value of the team's gone up, which invariably means the shares have gone up. It means that whoever's coming in is having to pay more. 2 billion for those who want to know. That's how much Aston Martin are currently valued at. If Aston Martin valued at 2 billion, I'd hate to feel like some of these bigger teams are valued at. But then that also explains why Alpine are holding their nerve in terms of the sale and why they're waiting. Because I can guarantee now, if Aston Martin are ranked at that, then Alpine ain't going to be far behind that one. So that's a massive increase. And we also know that with an 800 million buy-in for the Concord agreement, the new teams are going to have to pay Formula One teams. Their best route into Formula One currently is through an existing team where they don't have to pay that 800 million buy-in to the teams in the FIA. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that one. But 2 billion is the going rate for Aston Martin, which obviously puts Alpine into that category. Like I said, that story isn't new. It's the Aston Martin road car business selling their shares. The name will remain on the team and on the car, and ultimately it will remain Aston Martin for the time being. If Aston Martin do get sold, I'm fully expecting Aramco and the Middle East consortium to buy them up. That would be the most obvious route for that one. But as it stands, what you're hearing and reading today is just what happened in March, just that being finalised and going through. It's nothing new in terms of Aston Martin itself. And that's it. That's pretty much it. That's all I've got for. So just a few things on me. A massive thank you for all of the support that I've had recently. I've launched Coffee Corner Motorsport on Patreon. I'm sure many of you are sat there thinking, my word, what's this bloke doing? So many platforms, I struggle to listen to this guy for half hour. Why is he everywhere else? I'm trying to find a home for all of this stuff. I do lots of different things. People who know me will know I write, I film podcasts, I do the short videos. It's very hard to house in one place. The website is my home for that, which is www.coffeecornermotorsport.com. A massive thank you to the people who've been supporting the website. It's got some amazing clicks on it. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, overwhelmed by that. In terms of Patreon, yes, there's a paid option for Patreon. There's an option to help fund the Coffee Corner Motorsport if you so wish for the price of a coffee each month. I put that in there, and I'm not expecting people to pay. It's not behind a paywall. The content that you're getting is still the same content. The difference being that if you're a paid subscriber to the Patreon page, you'll get this podcast a day early and you'll get it without any adverts. But if you're a normal follower of the page, you'll still get it on Friday, either via YouTube or via the normal Spotify one with the adverts in. So I've tried to make it so that no one's disadvantaged, because I understand that money is tight for everyone, but I've also tried to make it so that if people do want to support, there is an avenue to support in a way that all your details are safe when you're putting it in, and it goes towards some part of paying for the subscriptions and stuff. Because I did a piece on this. The whole point of the reason I wasn't at Formula E this past weekend was financial. I'm not afraid to admit it. I make content from my shed whilst looking after our disabled children. It costs money to make content. Everything I do, whether it be this Riverside subscription where I'm recording this on, whether it be a hosting platform where the website is, whether it be an app for the videos with the subtitles on it, whatever way you look at it, there's an outlay to this. Many creators know that. I'm not alone in that one. And anything that goes into it, invariably, the little bits it does make, I mean little bits, it's not a lot at all, invariably goes back into either buying a new microphone or a new piece of equipment, or just paying off a subscription somewhere for the month to make it a bit more easier to make content. So I do want to do this full time in terms of, want to take Coffee Corner to a point where actually we can report it from the paddock. As I said at the front of the show, I really feel there's a niche in the market for just reporting it's factual and to the point, and that actually people want that. I firmly believe that. That's why I created this platform, and I thank everyone who's supported me along the way. And all the things like the Patreon page does, and same with Buy Me a Coffee page, it just funnels it back into it. So hopefully allow that dream to continue and allow to do it one day. Because ultimately there comes a point when you've been doing this for 3.5 years like I have now, where you've got to go, actually, I don't make any money off it. How long can I keep it as a hobby? Because it is time consuming. and then the trade-offs for that one. So I want to keep bringing you latest news. There is an option to support if you want to. Like I said, you'll get some perks like a shout out. You'll also get the podcast early without adverts on it, so you can listen to it peacefully like the night before. If you can't, or you can't afford it, or don't want to, Joe, that's absolutely cool. Just drop me a follow anyway. You'll get the contents out there. The reason I like Patreon is it's really easy for me to put links and stuff on. And what I'm finding with Instagram and also with TikTok, it's really hard to put a link for an article on there. I tend to write the articles like when Joe's at work or when I'm late with the kids and I haven't got the quietness to film. And so that's why I tend to write the articles. So that's why I plug them when I do. It's also a lot easier for me to churn out an article sometimes and actually make a video. Although I do try to come back to it, make a video later on anyway to keep people up to date. But when you try and put a link on Instagram or on TikTok, it just doesn't like it at all. So the whole point of like Patreon is that it's all housed under one roof. It directs you to the website. And also when there's a particular story on there, there's a link to it. No one follows me on X or Twitter. So whenever I put it on there, no one really notices it. And Facebook is a bit of a funny old business over there. It can blow hot and cold on there. You can open it to comments and just get absolutely brutally, sabotaged over there with the comments on there. So it's a funny old thing, the Facebook page. Although Coffee Corner is on there. And YouTube, it seems to be that you just need traction to grow. And mine goes in very much hit and miss. Yeah, Patreon is on there, like I say, option to put in a tier if you want to for the cost of a coffee, or like I say, sign up for free. And you'll still be up to date with the latest Formula One news. But don't worry if you're not on there, you're not missing enough. It's just an extension of the current content going on there. And I just want to explain it a bit more that anyone that goes in just goes back into friendliness, maybe buying a plane ticket somewhere to go and report on the Formula One. That's the dream. And yeah, we'll keep pushing it. We'll keep pushing those accreditation people to see if they let us in the paddock the right way to report Formula One news. But until then, we'll just keep reporting it from the shed, because it ain't bad, is it? So I'll take it up too much of your time. A huge thank you for listening. A huge thank you for the support you give on the page. Just a quick reminder already, hit that like, follow, subscribe button. Then when the episodes drop, you'll get it straight into your inboxes or onto your playlist, whichever you listen to it on. And of course, once again, a massive thank you from me. Have a good week as we head into the summer break. Coffee Corner Motorsport will be here. I'll probably move it to every couple of weeks because the news is a bit tighter on that one, but I'll let you know either way. So the best way to keep up to date is hit subscribe. Catch you later.